Hi, and welcome to another episode of Reviews for Adults. My name is Ali, and thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about the film Promising Young Woman. Now, this is going to be less a review and more an analysis. So if you haven't seen the film, please stop now and go watch it, as this analysis is going to be full of spoilers. This is also a trigger warning, as this analysis will deal with a lot of themes surrounding sexual assault. Now, Promising Young Woman focuses on the story of Cassie, played by Carey Mulligan, as she embarks on a journey of revenge. Now, the film is written and directed by Fennell. And this is important because Fennell is really showing us with this debut how strong of a filmmaker she is going to be. If this is her debut feature film, trust me, many more amazing things are going to come from her. Promising Young Woman is a film told in 5 acts and follows Cassie as she confronts men who sexually assault women who they believe to be inhibited by alcohol. Cassie does this in reaction to her best friend Nina's rape years earlier, and the subsequent discredit and neglect Nina suffered at the hands of established authority figures, as well as the people in her social circle. Cassie's life has been put on hold since the incident, except for her vigilante escapades, until she meets Ryan, played by Bo Burnham, an ex-medical school classmate. He is charming and successful, and as the relationship progresses, she begins to veer away from the life she had led prior to Ryan's arrival. As she resolves to finish that chapter of her life, she becomes aware of the existence of a videotape that captured Nina's rape. In the same moment she finally has concrete proof of the crime committed against Nina, Cassie also discovers that Ryan was not only present but laughed at Nina's abuse. It is in this moment that she must double down on her commitment to her goal to expose the players and the systems that allowed for Nina's rape to go unpunished. She decides to confront the perpetrator at his bachelor's party, where, during a struggle, he kills her. In the final act, we witness the miraculous fruition of Cassie's labors as she, seemingly from beyond the grave, enacts a plan of retribution and brings the perpetrators to justice. There seem to be 2 main contentions with the film. The first one having to do with presenting Cassie in a way in which she becomes the aggressor, as she perpetrates the same kind of acts that she's fighting against, thereby losing her humanity. And we'll get to that contention in a minute. The second contention has to do with killing off the heroine. Why would Fennell choose to kill off the protagonist, seemingly hearkening back to a figure of literature and art, which I am calling the tragic heroine, that goes back thousands of years. The very first instance of this heroine in ancient Greek literature is in Euripides' play Hippolytus. Phaedra in this play is the main character, and she commits suicide by the end. Now, this is a literary figure that continues on in Western literature to this day. From Ophelia to Madame Bovary, we continue to see these tragic women who undergo some kind of trauma and then are presented with 2 choices: either kill yourself or accept to be killed. I thought at first that Fennell's Cassie was going in that direction until I realized that she actually is neither one of these, or she's actually not this character. She's not the tragic heroine. This is because Cassie did not actually directly experience the trauma that she is railing against. This actually puts her in a position that is different from being a tragic heroine. This puts her in a position which I'm calling the hysterical heroine. Now, upon closer closer analysis, closer inspection, I realized that this character, Cassie, is much closer actually to Sophocles' Antigone than she is to Euripides' Phaedra. In the play Antigone by Sophocles, Antigone is a character who also doesn't experience directly the trauma from which she is reeling and which she stands up to against societal injustice. In this play, you could say that Antigone fights for or represents the contradiction between the law of God versus the law of man. Now, in Promising Young Woman, Cassie is a figure who didn't directly experience the trauma that she's reeling from, that she's become the byproduct of, and she also fights against the society that has allowed for the perpetration and the proliferation of this kind of action that goes unpunished. So that's why I'm calling Cassie the hysterical heroine. Now, what does hysterical mean? There are two ways in which we can have a perspective of what this is. Historically speaking, and also from the dominantly male perspective, hysteria came about as a medical diagnosis to designate a woman who had sort of gone mad. In effect, the study of hysteria was the beginning, or marked the beginning, of psychology. So from one perspective, we have the medical establishment, the scientific establishment, diagnosing a woman's response, and really a woman's response. This was not a diagnosis that was ever given to men. This was due to believing that it had something to do with the uterus. So the diagnosis was given to women who were not acting according to rules of normalcy and rules of politeness. On the other hand, from a psychoanalytic perspective, we can understand hysteria as the only reasonable reaction to systemic injustices. Now, again, this is something that Antigone fights against in the way that Creon and the city's law stop her from performing a ritual of burying her brother, and deem her to be a criminal and sentence her to death. In Cassie's point, she is reacting to a systemic problem of sexual assault that is enabled not only by friends at a party, but also academic institutions, scientific institutions, and the law. Now, I say the medical institution, referring back to the way in which the diagnosis of hysteria first came about in the scientific community as a way to diagnose women as they were having psychological reactions to their situations. Now, what this ended up culminating in is probably the biggest gaslight in history, in which the effects of sexual assault, or something like sexual assault of that kind of trauma, were now diagnosed as a product of your mental instability. I call this psychologizing. Now, to go back to the tragic heroine trope, this particular instance of psychologizing plays a huge role in this trope, because it's extremely easy to just say, okay, well, this is a very tragic and sublime tale of this wronged heroine who then commits suicide, but that's where it stays. Those are the limits of how far the story goes in order to explain why she's reacting in this way. Now, this is again why Cassie is it is so important for Cassie's role that she is not the direct victim of the rape, because that takes us completely outside of the realm of psychologization. It takes us squarely out of the, oh, well, this is just mental instability because of trauma realm into, oh, this is actually a systemic issue. In the fourth act, we see Cassie systematically dismantle the institutions that are proliferators and enablers of the systemic problem of sexual assault. We see her targeting, again, the academic institution, the law, and at the end we see the repercussions to the doctor, who stands for the medical profession or the scientific community. What's very, very interesting is the way in which the lawyer representing the law gets treated in this film. In the film, the lawyer is portrayed by Alfred Molina, and Cassie goes to this lawyer in order to seek retribution. He was a lawyer who protected Nina's perpetrator. When she finds him, however, he's a wreck. He has had a sort of mental collapse and or a crisis of conscience, really, and is therefore himself diagnosed as being mentally unstable, which is a very, very interesting position, not only from the perspective of hysteria, but from the perspective of how the law itself is having a crisis, right? Is in crisis. I thought that was a very, very well done in the script. Now, this perspective of the hysterical heroine really takes aim at the other reading, which we said we were going to cover at the beginning of this video, the other contention about Promising Young Woman, which seems to be that the film sells its heroine short by forcing her to, or setting her on a path that is like inhumane, or that is, shows her to have sociopathic rage. Now, of course, I'm referencing here the article written for the New York Times by Lena Wilson. Now, in this article, which I'll link below, Lena Wilson discusses her view or her reading of the film as setting Cassie down this path in which she becomes the aggressor and therefore loses her personhood. In the end of the article, Lena Wilson seems to give us the old adage that living well is the best revenge. Really is just akin to just get over it, right? So in my mind, this perspective really loses the entire vision of and the narrative of the story that really deals with the systemic aspects of sexual abuse, and actually goes straight or feeds right into the hand of the institutions that would tell a rape victim to just get over it, that it's just a psychological problem that you have to get over. In fact, Lena Wilson doesn't even seem concerned in her article that Cassie gets murdered in the end by the same perpetrator who raped her best friend. This is not the contention. The contention is that she is too aggressive, that she perpetuates the same kind of aggression that she's trying to fight against. Now, of course, this line of thought feeds straight into the criticism that Promising Young Woman is laying at the feet of institutionalized or systemic abuse. However, one philosophical question remains, which is, what exactly is the ontological status of Cassandra as she is enacting this plan? Now, of course, Cassandra by this point has been murdered, and it shows in the screen clearly that she's sending these text messages to Beau's cell phone at the very, very end of the film via scheduled posts. However, we're still having real world interactions with a dead character. So where is Cassandra speaking from? Now, this is probably the most philosophical aspect of the film, and why this film is really sort of creating a new kind of mythology. My reading of the ending of Promising Young Woman is that Cassie transcends her status as a character in a story beyond even a tempting reading of her as an icon of the figure of the tragic heroine. Instead, she becomes a placeholder for an idea of the type of radical action that needs to be taken in order to address the systemic nature of rape and sexual assault. Only through a thorough repudiation and disavowal of every system, institution, and individual that enables rape can sexual violence and the accompanying culture that enables it be rooted out. Cassie, as a true hysteric, is the emblem of the idea for the only possible solution to this deeply rooted and virulent problem. In either case, it is very clear that with the winky face, Emerald Fennell carries out a total undermining not only of the characters in the narrative, but of the audience and our preconceived notions, not only of what we were expecting about the narrative, but how we understand that kind of character. So she carried out an incredibly well executed hoodwink for a good cause that I think that ultimately carries a lot of theoretical weight behind the kinds of ideas and theories that speak about what it would take in order to address the problem of sexual assault. Let us know what you thought of the analysis if you've seen the film, and what you think of the analysis in respect to your reading of the film, if you agree with us or if you don't. You can also watch any more videos on our site, and also you can read more reviews and analyses at reviewsforadults.com. We hope to see you back here soon. Thank you for joining us.